Well, look who finally decided to show up.
Hello, Marcus.
You actually came. I thought you'd be doing better than this.
Marcus, who's she?
My ex-wife.
Really? Oh, I expected someone a little more impressive.
No, don't shake her hand. The words rang across the ballroom just as Evelyn Carter reached for a glass of sparkling water. Every conversation stopped. More than 200 former classmates turned toward the voice. Marcus Holloway stepped forward with a smug grin, one arm wrapped around his glamorous girlfriend, Bianca. Evelyn, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I almost didn't recognize you. Evelyn slowly lowered her hand from the refreshment table and faced the man she hadn't seen in 12 years. Hello, Marcus. He looked her up and down, making no effort to hide his disappointment. I thought life would have upgraded you a little. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. Bianca tilted her head. So this is the famous ex-wife. Marcus laughed. The one and only. Bianca smiled sweetly before delivering the insult. Oh, I expected someone a little more successful. Several people exchanged uncomfortable glances. Evelyn remained calm. It's nice to meet you too. Marcus shook his head. Still polite. That was always your problem. He turned toward the crowd. You know, back in college, everyone thought she'd be the successful one. Laughter spread across a nearby table. Marcus continued. And look at us now. He spread his arms proudly. I own one of the fastest growing real estate companies in the state. More applause. He pointed toward Evelyn. And she's. He paused dramatically. What exactly do you do these days? Every eye settled on Evelyn. She smiled politely. I've been working. Marcus laughed. Working where? I help build communities. Bianca burst into laughter. Oh, that's adorable. Marcus slapped his knee. So, construction? Evelyn nodded once. In a way. I knew it. Marcus grinned at the crowd. I always said she'd end up on a construction site. More laughter. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. You know what? Since we're old friends. He pressed the card into her hand. I'll get you a job. The room erupted. Bianca clapped enthusiastically. Marcus, you're so generous. Someone whispered loudly enough for others to hear. I guess divorce really hit her hard. Another voice followed. I heard she disappeared after everything collapsed. Marcus folded his arms. You don't have to be embarrassed, Evelyn. Everybody falls sometimes. She looked down at the business card before slipping it into her purse. Thank you. That answer confused him. No excuses? No. No speech. She smiled gently. I appreciate your concern. For a brief second, Marcus felt strangely uncomfortable. He had expected tears, or anger, or at least an argument. Instead, nothing. Bianca leaned closer. You know what I admire? Marcus raised an eyebrow. What? People who accept reality. She looked directly at Evelyn. It takes courage to admit when someone else won. Marcus laughed again. She's right. Evelyn simply nodded. I'm glad you're both happy. She walked away before either of them could say another word. Outside the ballroom, she stood on the quiet terrace overlooking the city lights. She finally let out the breath she'd been holding. Her phone vibrated. Then again, and again. She glanced at the screen. Richard, Executive Office. Ignored. Another call. State Infrastructure Board. Ignored. Another. Chief of Staff. Ignored. She placed the phone on silent. Tonight wasn't about work. At least, it wasn't supposed to be. Evelyn. She turned. A woman hurried toward her. Nina? Nina Brooks smiled warmly before pulling Evelyn into a hug. Oh my goodness. It's really you. It's been forever. You look wonderful. So do you. Nina stepped back. I saw what Marcus did. Evelyn shrugged. It wasn't the first time he underestimated someone. I wanted to throw my drink at him. Evelyn laughed softly. That would have made tonight memorable. It already is. Nina's smile slowly disappeared. I actually needed to talk to you. Evelyn noticed the concern in her eyes. What happened? Not here. They walked farther down the terrace. Nina lowered her voice. I'm the Alumni Association treasurer now. Congratulations. I wish it felt like one. Evelyn waited. Nina looked around to make sure no one could hear. Our scholarship fund. What about it? Money is disappearing. Evelyn frowned. How much? Millions. Silence. We thought it was accounting errors. And it isn't. Nina reached into her purse and removed a thin envelope. I shouldn't even have these. She handed it over. Inside were copies of invoices, wire transfers, approval signatures, vendor payments. Evelyn slowly flipped through them. They're paying consulting firms. Yes. They all have different names. Nina nodded. But every company traces back to the same mailing address. Evelyn looked up. Who approved these? Nina hesitated. I wish I were wrong. She pointed toward one signature. Marcus Holloway. Another page. Bianca Holloway Development Holdings. Another. The same pattern. Again. And again. Evelyn carefully returned the papers. Does anyone else know? Only the forensic accountant. And he asked me not to confront anyone until he finished. Evelyn nodded. He's right. Nina looked surprised. You're not angry? Anger doesn't prove anything. But after what Marcus just did, Evelyn shook her head. If he's guilty, facts will expose him. If he's innocent, then accusations could destroy an innocent person. Nina stared at her. You really haven't changed. I hope not. Nina smiled sadly. I have. What do you mean? I would have wanted revenge years ago. Evelyn looked back toward the ballroom. So would have I. Inside, Marcus raised another glass. I was telling everyone about our newest luxury development. Someone asked, didn't your company just win another city contract? Marcus smirked. We're about to. Another classmate laughed. You're unstoppable. Bianca kissed his cheek. My future husband always gets what he wants. Marcus noticed Evelyn returning. He couldn't resist. There she is. People turned again. He raised his glass. Evelyn. She stopped walking. I've been thinking. About what? If construction doesn't work out. A few people laughed before he even finished. Our office could probably use someone answering phones. The laughter grew louder. Bianca covered her mouth dramatically. Oh, Marcus. What? I'm trying to help. Evelyn smiled. That's thoughtful. He frowned. Why aren't you upset? Should I be? I'm insulting you. I noticed. And I don't have to accept every opinion someone has about me. The room became quieter. Marcus forced another laugh. Still giving those little speeches. She looked at him kindly. No. She glanced around the ballroom. I'm simply enjoying my evening. Then she walked toward another table. Several classmates watched her leave. One woman whispered, I don't know. What? She doesn't act like someone who's struggling. Marcus overheard them. Trust me. He chuckled confidently. I know Evelyn. She's always been too proud to admit when she needs help. Bianca nodded. Exactly. Neither of them noticed that across the room, the reunion coordinator had just received an urgent phone call. His eyes widened. She's here already? He listened for another few seconds. Yes. I'll make sure everything is ready. He ended the call and looked across the ballroom. His gaze settled on Evelyn. He smiled to himself. They're finally here. The reunion coordinator slipped his phone back into his pocket and straightened his tie before quietly walking toward the stage. Whatever call he had just received clearly mattered, but he said nothing to the guests. Across the ballroom, Marcus was still entertaining the crowd. So, he announced, lifting his drink again. Who remembers when Evelyn used to tell everyone she wanted to change cities with better infrastructure? Several classmates laughed. I remember, someone called out. Marcus shook his head dramatically. She had these huge dreams. Bianca smirked. Dreams are free. They sure are, Marcus replied. Reality is expensive. More laughter. Evelyn continued speaking with Nina as though she hadn't heard a word. You really don't want to respond? Nina whispered. Evelyn smiled. What would I gain? He deserves it. No. He embarrassed you. He embarrassed himself. Nina studied her friend's face. I don't know how you stay this calm. I wasn't always. What changed? Evelyn looked toward the windows. I finally stopped measuring my life by someone else's opinion. Before Nina could answer, another familiar voice interrupted. Evelyn. Both women turned. A gray-haired woman stood there with tears in her eyes. Professor Linda Foster. Evelyn's smile grew instantly. Professor. Without hesitation, Evelyn hugged her former engineering professor. I wouldn't have missed seeing you. The older woman stepped back. You look wonderful. So do you. Marcus watched from across the room. Look at that, he muttered. Bianca glanced over. Who's the old lady? One of Evelyn's professors. Professor Foster held Evelyn's hands. You know, I still tell students about you. Evelyn laughed softly. I hope only the good stories. The best stories. Professor Foster looked around proudly. You were one of the brightest young women I ever taught. Marcus couldn't resist. He walked over. Professor Foster. She turned politely. Oh, Marcus. He smiled confidently. I was just telling everyone how successful life has been. I heard. He nodded proudly. Real estate has treated me very well. Professor Foster smiled politely. I'm glad. Marcus looked at Evelyn. I was also offering Evelyn a position if she's looking for work. Professor Foster frowned slightly. A position? Reception, administration, something suitable. Bianca added, we're very generous. Professor Foster looked at Evelyn. You need a job? Evelyn answered before the professor could misunderstand. I'm doing just fine. Marcus laughed. She's too humble to admit she could use a little help. Professor Foster looked from Marcus to Evelyn. Then she smiled knowingly. I've learned not to underestimate quiet people. Marcus chuckled. I don't. He excused himself before anyone could continue the conversation. As he walked away, Bianca whispered, Why was she looking at you like that? Marcus shrugged. Old professors always have favorites. Professor Foster waited until they were out of earshot. I almost corrected him. Evelyn shook her head. Please don't. Why? Because tonight isn't about proving anything. The professor smiled warmly. You're still exactly who I hoped you'd become. A waiter approached Evelyn. Ma'am. Yes. Someone asked me to give you this. He handed her a small folded note. She opened it. Everything is ready whenever you are. No name. No signature. Only that sentence. She folded it carefully and slipped it into her purse. Nina noticed. What was that? Nothing urgent. You don't seem surprised. I'm not. Across the ballroom, Marcus was now surrounded by former classmates asking about his latest developments. So how many projects do you have now? One man asked. Marcus grinned. 6 major ones. That's incredible. The 7th will change everything. Bianca wrapped her arm around him. The city redevelopment. Marcus nodded proudly. Exactly. Someone whistled. That contract is worth hundreds of millions. Marcus lifted his chin. We've basically got it. You've already signed? Not officially. But it's only a matter of time. Applause broke out around him. Marcus soaked in every second. He noticed Evelyn walking past. Hey. She stopped. You should come see the site sometime. She smiled politely. Why? So you can see what real success looks like. A few people laughed again. Evelyn answered calmly. I've seen enough construction sites for one lifetime. Marcus smirked. I doubt that. She simply nodded and walked away. One classmate frowned. Doesn't she seem different? What do you mean? Marcus asked. I don't know. She doesn't look defeated. Marcus scoffed. Trust me. I was married to her. I know exactly who she is. At another table, Nina leaned closer. I've been reviewing those invoices for weeks. And? Evelyn asked. They're too clean. What do you mean? Every payment follows procedure. That's intentional. Nina looked confused. Evelyn continued quietly. When people hide fraud, they usually make mistakes. But experienced people create paperwork that looks legitimate. Nina stared. You figured that out in seconds. I've seen complicated contracts before. You think Marcus knew? I don't know. And Bianca? I don't know. Nina sighed. I hate not knowing. So do investigators. But that's why they investigate. Before either woman could continue, a loud clinking sound echoed through the ballroom. The reunion host tapped a spoon against his glass. May I have everyone's attention? Conversations slowly faded. We'll begin tonight's recognition ceremony in just a few minutes. Guests applauded. Marcus leaned toward Bianca. This should be fun. She smiled. I hope they recognize your company. They might. The host continued. But first, we'd like everyone to take their seats. Rows of round tables filled quickly. Evelyn quietly chose a seat near the back. Marcus noticed. He laughed. Still hiding. Bianca whispered. People sit in the back when they don't want attention. Marcus nodded. Exactly. Professor Foster deliberately walked across the ballroom and sat beside Evelyn. Several classmates noticed. So the professor picked Evelyn. Interesting. Marcus rolled his eyes. Sentimental. The lights dimmed slightly. The reunion host returned to the microphone. Before we celebrate the achievements of our graduating class. He paused. We have one special guest joining us this evening. Marcus whispered to Bianca. Probably the mayor. Bianca smiled. Or a celebrity. The ballroom doors opened. Several distinguished men and women in business attire entered quietly. They didn't stop to greet anyone. Instead, they looked around the room until one of them smiled. There she is, he whispered. They began walking directly toward Evelyn. Marcus watched with a puzzled expression. Do you know those people? Bianca shook her head. No. Neither of them noticed every member of the group smiling respectfully as they approached the woman they had mocked all evening. If this story has you wondering what happens next, take a second to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next drama. And tell us in the comments. Do you think Marcus is simply arrogant? Or do you believe he already knows more about those missing scholarship funds than he's admitting? The biggest truth of the night is only moments away. Marcus watched the group cross the ballroom. The man leading them stopped in front of Evelyn and smiled. My apologies for interrupting your evening. Evelyn stood. Good evening, Daniel. We've delayed the board meeting twice. I know. The governor insisted we wait. She smiled apologetically. I asked everyone to give me tonight. Daniel nodded. Of course. Only then did he notice the stunned faces around the room. He turned to the reunion host. I believe you're ready. The host smiled nervously. We certainly are. Marcus frowned. What exactly is going on? No one answered him. The host stepped back onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, the room slowly became quiet. Every reunion reminds us where we started. He smiled toward the audience. But tonight, we'd also like to celebrate someone who never forgot where she came from. Several guests looked around. The lights dimmed. A large screen descended behind the stage. This person asked us for complete anonymity. The first image appeared. A group of children walking into a newly renovated public school. The next image. A bridge connecting two rural communities. Another. A modern hospital expansion. Another. Scholarship recipients smiling beside their families. The audience watched in silence. The final image faded onto the screen. A portrait of Evelyn. Beneath it appeared the words, Founder and Chief Executive Officer. Carter Civic Infrastructure, the largest woman-owned infrastructure company in the region. Gasps filled the ballroom. Marcus blinked. No. Bianca slowly lowered her champagne glass. That can't be right. The host continued. Over the past 9 years, Carter Civic Infrastructure has completed more than 400 public projects, created thousands of jobs, and funded educational programs across the state. More photographs appeared. Community centers, libraries, roads, schools, clean water systems. The audience erupted into applause. Marcus stood frozen. The host smiled toward Evelyn. Tonight, we'd also like to publicly thank the anonymous donor whose $40 million gift will build our new Innovation and Scholarship Center. He extended his hand. Ms. Evelyn Carter. The entire ballroom stood. Everyone except Marcus. Professor Foster wiped away tears. I knew you would change the world. Nina smiled proudly. I've been waiting all night for this. Evelyn slowly walked to the stage. She accepted the applause with quiet grace. She leaned toward the microphone. Thank you. The room immediately became silent. I didn't come here expecting recognition. She glanced around the ballroom. I came because this school helped shape the person I became. She smiled toward Professor Foster. Especially one teacher who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Professor Foster covered her mouth as tears rolled down her cheeks. Evelyn continued. Success isn't something we achieve alone. It's something we're trusted to use for others. The applause grew louder. Marcus finally found his voice. This is ridiculous. People turned toward him. There has to be some mistake. Daniel calmly stepped forward. There isn't. Marcus shook his head. She said she worked construction. Evelyn smiled gently. I do. Daniel couldn't help smiling. She builds entire cities. A few classmates laughed. Not at Evelyn. At Marcus. His face flushed. Bianca whispered desperately. You never knew? Marcus swallowed hard. No. The reunion host spoke again. We have one more announcement. The room settled. Our Alumni Association recently initiated a financial review of our scholarship program. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The host continued carefully. The review is ongoing. We won't speculate, but all future financial matters will be handled independently. Nina looked toward Evelyn. Evelyn gave a nearly invisible nod. No accusations. No public humiliation. Just facts. The ceremony ended with another standing ovation. As people gathered around Evelyn, Marcus pushed through the crowd. Evelyn. She turned. Congratulations. Thank you. He forced a smile. I had no idea. I know. I may have judged you too quickly. She remained quiet. He cleared his throat. My company is expanding. I heard. I think there could be opportunities for us to work together. Daniel looked at Marcus with mild amusement. Evelyn answered before he could speak. I'm afraid our procurement process doesn't allow discussions while compliance reviews are underway. Marcus frowned. What compliance review? The one involving organizations connected to the scholarship fund. His face turned pale. You think I stole something? I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? I'm saying independent investigators deserve the time to do their work. Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Bianca suddenly grabbed his arm. We should go. But now. They hurried toward the exit. The ballroom buzzed with whispers. Professor Foster approached Evelyn. You could have embarrassed him the way he embarrassed you. I could have. But you didn't. There was no reason. The whole room would have applauded. Evelyn smiled. I wasn't trying to win the room. A few weeks later, the forensic audit was completed. The investigation uncovered a network of shell companies receiving inflated consulting payments from the Alumni Scholarship Fund. Several contracts had been routed through businesses connected to Marcus's development firm. Electronic approvals traced back to executives within his organization. Whether every approval had been intentional would be determined in court. But the evidence was enough for city officials to suspend his public contracts while the investigation continued. Bianca quietly resigned from every company she managed. Within days, investors withdrew. Banks froze lending. Projects stopped. Meanwhile, investigators publicly confirmed that Carter Civic Infrastructure had no connection to the missing funds. Every financial review found Evelyn's company completely compliant. Months passed. Construction began on the new Innovation and Scholarship Center. On opening day, hundreds of students gathered outside the beautiful new building. A bronze plaque stood near the entrance. It didn't bear Evelyn's name. Instead, it read, The Linda Foster Innovation and Scholarship Center, dedicated to the teacher who inspired generations to dream beyond their circumstances. Professor Foster stared at the plaque in disbelief. Evelyn, you gave me confidence before I had success. You changed my life. Evelyn smiled. You changed mine first. The ribbon was cut. Students poured inside laughing, talking excitedly about their futures. Nina stood beside Evelyn. You finally got your happy ending. Evelyn watched the students disappear through the doors. No. She smiled softly. They did. She realized something she had never fully understood during all those years after her divorce. Marcus had never been the measure of her worth. His rejection had not defined her. His insults could not diminish what she had built. And his opinion no longer carried any weight in her heart. Real success wasn't watching someone else lose everything. It was knowing that because she refused to become bitter, thousands of young people would have opportunities she once dreamed of herself. As the sun shone across the new campus, Evelyn quietly walked inside with Professor Foster, leaving the past exactly where it belonged. If this story touched you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs the reminder that your value is never determined by the people who walked away from you. And tell us in the comments, do you think Evelyn made the right choice by letting the law handle Marcus instead of taking revenge herself? We'd love to hear your thoughts, and we'll see you in the next story.